Hey guys, it's Julian and Thomas here. We're going to show you how to do the KINETIQ 4x4 manual roller shutter installation today. So I'm going to go run through all the parts and bits and pieces, and then we're going to show you the install of how to build the shutter as is off the car, and then also how to install it on the car. So we're working outside here today because the workshop is absolutely chock-a-block. There's no room for us. So we've got everything set up and laid out here on the table. So I'm just going to give you a bit of a run through quickly on the parts list of what you should receive when you order a manual roller shutter. So starting off here, these are your 6 mounting brackets. We're going to show you where these go. You've got your 4 drainage hoses. You've got 2 thin ones, which are towards the rear of the tailgate, and the 2 thicker ones as well, which are towards the front of the tailgate. You've also got hose clamps associated with those here, 2 big ones, 2 small ones. These long bolts here with the little rubber end caps go with these brackets as well. You'll see those installed on the car. This here is for the top cover of the roller shutter. This will be when we assemble it. We'll show you that in a second. These are your channel nuts, which put the threads through with the nuts and the washers, which are going to attach these rails to the actual canister itself. And you'll also receive this latch with some screws and some other screws here in the box as well. Both of these things here, disregard these. You don't need to use these during the installation. They're just included in the kit for a different model, but they're not required for the Shark 6. So you can get rid of these. We don't need any of these parts. Keep them aside, keep them in your toolbox. They're actually good roofing style screws. So it's a bit of a score there. Now moving on to the actual parts of the shutter, you've got your aluminium side rails here. So you've got a left side rail and a right side rail. So you'll see the profile here tapers for the Shark, which makes sure it fits the tub absolutely perfectly. And then this is your main canister of the roller shutter here. So it's got the blind in it, it's got your lock, and we're going to be attaching these side rails to this canister. And then this is your top cover here. So the top cover is going to protect from anything going inside. You've got the rubber seal there as well. It's got some tape on the back there as well. You've also got your keys for the manual roller shutter, which will be attached here as well. So don't forget to take those off. So now we're going to actually assemble this shutter and show you how to put it together before you put it on the car. So this is our passenger side end rail. So basically you're going to be feeding this section here, this channel, through. It's going to be sitting on top of this part here. Now you'll notice in the middle here there is an opening that sticks up, little knob. That's going to end up inside there. So Thomas will pull the blind out of the canister and we will feed that through, and we'll do the same thing for both sides.
So we'll start by bringing the roller shutter blind through this channel here with this corner here. And we're going to be feeding it through and then pushing the arm forward until that stud here lines up with the stud hole here in the arm. So it's a bit of a massage, but you will get there eventually. So now you've got it nested in its position in that little notch area, we can start putting in some studs to secure this arm. So you start with the studs here. You want to make sure that the Allen key slot is facing downwards so you can adjust the tension. You don't want to tighten these fully yet, you just want to have them nipped, and you'll be tightening over everything at the end of the installation. Like so. We'll be doing the same thing as before. We'll be feeding the other side of the shutter blind through the channel, and then feeding it onto the thing. Again, shimmy it back and forth with the shutter blind and the arm so you can meet it up with the locking tab here, and then we'll be able to secure it with the studs, washers, and nuts underneath. And once you are lined up, you can start feeding in your studs and then applying your nuts to secure it. So now that we have our studs in place, we just want to have them nipped for the time being. We don't want to fully tighten them as of yet because we still have to add one more component and then we can tighten everything in its place. Next up, we have our top cover. This cover can be removed, so you can remove leaves or dust or dirt or anything from the inside. Just to install it, literally place it on top, line up your screw holes here. You have 3 on one side and then 3 on the other side. You want to make sure that your rubber here at the back is going underneath the shutter arm and that the rubber is poking out a little bit like so, just from the edge here. Now that I'm happy with the position of the rubber, I can start putting in my screws. These screws are in combination with the caps that are provided. So what you want to do, you take one cap, you feed in your little screw, come back out, and it sits in like so. This is just to cover the top of the screw when you're tightening it down. Again, this is still in loose because we've got to put in the other 5. Now we can come to tightening our manual shutter. So we want to start with the screws on the top. We can finally nip these down all the way. I like to have the caps in this position so that way once you do tighten it, you can just fold the cap forward and that hides the top of the screw cap nicely. So you want to continue with the other side. And once all these 6 screws are tight, we can then tighten the studs and nuts underneath the shutter arms. Now that we've done the top screws here, we can start tightening the undersides of the studs here. I'm using an electric 10mm ratchet. Feel free to use a spanner or any 10mm size that you need. So that's pretty much the assembly of the manual shutter completed. All you really need to assemble this is a 10mm on a ratchet or a spanner, a Phillips head screwdriver, and an Allen key which is provided in the kit. And that's all you really need. At this point, what I like to do is just run my finger over these rubbers here. So sometimes these like to come out during the pre-assembly and mounting it to the car because they can just pop out like this. You want to just run your finger over them and make sure that they all stay in place. And you also want to make sure that your rubber, which is part of your top plate here, has a slight overhang. This is perfect, matching the other side, and we are going to be trimming this down anyway.
The customer's arrived now with his Shark. So we are going to get this manual roller shutter on. Now, if you're gonna get up in this tub, you obviously gotta sort of force your knee up here. This is why you need our retractable step. So that step easily goes in and out, makes life getting in and out of the tub that much easier. It just bolts on down here, and that way I would just be able to step up and step in. But we're gonna jump in here anyway. I'm gonna show you the silicone work that you need to do on your Shark when you're doing a roller shutter. This is very important, otherwise you will get water leaking at the front. So if we have a look here at what Thomas has done, this part here is usually a big gap. So he's used silicone to seal that. Now we've seen other customers do installs with other brands and notice that it's still leaking. you have to silicone all the way down. So all the way down into the corners there, because there is a hole from factory right down there in that corner. So you run a nice bead of silicone all the way across the top, getting it nice and flush with the top, down there, through the corner, all the way into the corner there. Because if not, you will still get water coming through here and be wondering why your shutter is leaking. So we do that on both sides. There's already done the silicone work here. So you just need some waterproof, all-weather storm sealant. And once the shutter is on, you don't see this either. So do it as neat as possible. We generally put the silicone on. We will get some Windex or some water and use a putter pop stick to get that nice and flat. That's the best result, but everyone's got their own techniques. So basically that's all we need to do to prep the tub before we put the manual shutter on. And we're just going to lift that on now. All right, so for this next part, you will need 2 people. So when you're lifting this up, just make sure that you're not going to squash the rubber flap. So try and keep one finger under there and lift over the top. Make sure the canister doesn't touch the car. Get it into position. Make sure the rubber's not folded and drop it down there. You can make your adjustments afterwards here to the side rubbers, but just getting it on the car there is what's important. Don't worry about these rubber flaps for now. We're going to adjust this to where it needs to be, and then we're going to show you how to stick these down as well and trim this little piece. So basically that's it sitting on the car now. Now we need to make some adjustments and get the brackets on. So we'll show you how to do that. So as a guide for the rubbers, before you start putting any brackets on or getting it in position, you can see that the rubber is folded under the corner here when we lifted it on. So just go through and check them and make sure that you push them outwards so that it's nice and flush. Then if you come to the front here, you can see that it's pretty close with the cab, but we still do have around 5 to 7 mils of a gap between the cab. And we've pulled the rubber forward a little bit so that this part of the tape here is going to actually sit flush down, and then we end up trimming this piece as well. We'll show you that later, but you want that sitting there. What we're going to do is we're going to put a dab of silicone just in this section, which will hold the rubber down, which then helps divert the water, as we found that sometimes, you know, with all weather and dust and things like that, the tape that's on there isn't super effective. You can just use the tape, but we're going to show you what we do when we do the installations. And then the middle piece, we just have to make sure that's tucked down, but we'll show you that when we get to it. So now we'll start assembling with some brackets, and once the brackets are on loose, we're going to adjust it on the car and show you where it sits. All right, so these are your mounting brackets, which are going to mount the shutter to the car. Now, it's worth noting on these here, I've got them in the exact orientation that they need to be. So the one for the front here has a slightly longer leg at the top, and it's got a single notch in the bracket there. So you need 2 of those. So they're going to go at the front, so exactly as they are. So this is the front towards the rear windscreen, this is the middle, and this is towards the tailgate. The ones for the middle and the tailgate side have 2 notches in them. So just make sure they are, all these 4 here are the same. The only 2 different ones are for the front. So you've got a little bit more wiggle room up the front there to get your channel nuts with threads in, which we're going to show you next.
So to start off with mounting our brackets, we first get our slides and we get our studs. Again, we want to make sure that the Allen key slot at the bottom is facing downward. So you just start threading these in. And once you have 6 of these, like we do here, we can start threading them in to the actual slide, which I'll show you where those go now. So to start off with, we have 3 of our 6 slides and studs, and we fit them into this opening right here. So this is what we're going to be starting off with. So we just get 1, 2, and 3. Now these 3, once they're in, we evenly space them out. So we bring this one, we can leave right here next to the opening. This second one here, we bring up to the tail light, sorry, the tub light, right here. And our third one, we bring all the way here, just before the closing gap of this space here. this is where we roughly want to be for our brackets. And on the opposite side, we do the exact same thing. Just thread in our slides and studs and position them where they need to go. So one at the front here, one next to the tub light here, round about where this bolt is, and third one at this gap, just here. So to start off with, I grabbed 3 sockets which will help me install this bracket. So we've got a 10mm, 12mm, and 13mm sockets, which is going to help me get through this. So first of all, we take our 12mm, put on our ratchet or spanner, whatever you prefer, and we start opening these brackets here. Only a little bit. That way, this claw at the back here opens. Once this is open, we can feed it behind this thin line under here. So there's a little space here where you can hook this claw around and grip it. This will help adhere the clamp to the actual top of the body. And then once you do all 6 of these, we can start putting these on the car. Once our brackets are opened up and we can put them on the tub, we grab 6 nuts and 6 washers so we can put these on straight away. Before we continue, just keep in mind that with the brackets with the single notch in them have a longer top, and these 2 brackets with the single notch go at the very front of the shutter. So first off, what we want to do is we want to feed the stud through this hole here, and this claw, which opens up, is going to go around this gap here. And these front brackets, because they're a little bit longer, will help us reach that. So I'm just holding it in a position here, and then I'm going to get a washer and a nut, and then fix that on here. Now, you don't need to go tight with these nuts. You just have to get it up to the point where it touches the shutter arm and just nip it. You don't need to leave it there. And then we can continue mounting the rest. With this middle bracket, you can butt it up right against the bolt here, factory bolt of the tub, and that's in its position there. And for our last bracket, closest to the tailgate, we feed it in, apply our nut and washer, and we bring it roughly about here. So we're about 5mm away between the tub body and the bracket there. And now we will repeat this process again on the opposite side. Keeping in mind, the single notch bracket goes to the front and the double notch brackets go between the middle and the rear. So still using our 12mm, we can now tighten the clamps which are behind the brackets, and keep in mind that we want to have these clamps pushed all the way up as far as they can go, making sure they're even, of course, and we can tighten them in place. So now that we have the brackets in position and secure to the tub, we can now back off these little 10mm so we can do our shutter adjustment, making sure it's in the right position. We're only backing them off just that little bit to give us that freedom of movement. So now we're outside of the tub, and we want to make sure that these ends, as you can see, we can still move them. We want to make sure that they're in far enough so that way the shutter door doesn't have any side-to-side movement. We want to eliminate that, otherwise the shutter door won't lock properly. So what we do is I like to bring the shutter arm here a little bit in like this and just pulling it in with my hands just gently. So that way that rubber curve is just meeting up there. So that way it's all straight. And then when I'm holding it in this position with one hand, I'm putting my ratchet on and I'm tightening it in its position. Just the one, I'm not doing the other two as well, just to have it in a dummy position to see if I like that adjustment, and we can go from there. And of course, I'm doing the same on the other side as well, just where that curve starts, it's meeting up with the plastic here. So it's all, both of them are straight, and I tighten it in its position. Again, this is not final, and we'll be adjusting more. So now that we have both of our ends bolted down just temporarily, we can now test the shutter operation. So when I pull it closed, it immediately locks into place. And best part, I have no side-to-side movement because there are locking pins inside the end of this, which tap into the actual arms. Now, if the arms aren't pushed in far enough, those locking pins won't engage and the shutter will come open after some bumps on the road. So I'm happy with this adjustment where it's all secure. Now we can tighten the rest of the arms in its current position. Keep in mind when you're adjusting, it'll still be a little bit tough. That's completely normal because we have not lubricated these tracks yet. So we will be putting some curtain track lube or HHS grease or even WD-40 to lubricate these tracks, and then it'll open and close much more freely. So now that I'm happy with our arm adjustment, we can tighten the rest of these 10 mils here. So next up, our most important step with these brackets are our 13 mil bolts. These bolts are long and come with these caps for a very particular reason. So if you choose to add further accessories to your shutter, or more, should I say, on top of your shutter, these bolts, which thread in through these gold tips here, they prevent the shutter arm from bowing inwards when you add weight to the shutter. For example, if we turn around here, and you see on our KINETIQ Shark, we have these racks, and we have the canoe, and we have all this weight on it. This basically makes sure that when you add weight to the shutter, that keeps the arms of the shutter from bowing inwards when you add the weight. So these bolts that you find in your kit are absolutely necessary and good for when you're adding more weight. So to start off with, we need a 13 millimeter extension socket. We want to start threading these in by hand to begin with. Once they're threaded in, you can start sending it the way in. And when you get to a certain point where you feel the end of the bolt coming through, you want to add this little rubber boot here that just goes on the end, like so, and you start tightening it until it touches the tub. Now, I've only tightened it so much that you just started to see the bracket bowing back upwards. That's about as tight as you want it. Don't go any further than that. And that is tight enough, it won't go anywhere thanks to the rubber boot. And that will keep your rail extra sturdy and secure for adding future weight. So now that I'm happy with that adjustment, a few things that we're going to check. Firstly, you still have no side to side movement, which we don't, which is good. Secondly, we want to make sure that the locking mechanism actually works. So we have our keys here, and we're going to test both keys that it's working properly. So if you see the lock in a horizontal position, that means it's unlocked. We insert our key and turn it. That is in the closed position. And there's no action in the lock, and it's not engaging. We unlock it again and test it. Works just fine. We test the second key of the same thing. No action in the lock, that's closed. Open it up again. Lock still works just fine. Now, if you are opening and closing this tub often, a note to keep in mind, there's two ways of locking it. One, you go all the way to the mid lock or the far lock. And you hear that click, that means the lock is re-engaged. And you can pull it closed again. The second method, if you have it about halfway, and you want to lock it again, you pull this tab to the left, like so. You hear the lock engage again, and you can pull it closed again, like so. And that's locked again. Another thing to keep in mind as well is that we're going to be trimming these corner rubbers here because they interfere with the tailgate. So we're going to give that a little bit of a trim, and we'll check that in a moment. One thing to also keep in mind is when you close your tailgate, you'll see a very small rubber seal which goes right up against it. You want to make sure that that seal is good and that you can't see inside the tub, or if you're sitting inside the tub, that you can't see outward. And as you can see with our corner rubbers here, how they fold under, we want to trim that down a little bit so we don't actually keep wearing that out. You want to make sure still that your tailgate is opening and closing nicely, even with the shutter resting on top of it. And you can open this either way. You can either have it opening via the tailgate or opening via the shutter itself, and still locking perfectly fine. Now that I've opened and closed the shutter a couple of times, you can see a slight indent made on the rubber, which will give us a rough indication on where to trim this, so that way it's a nice fit. You take a really nice, good pair of scissors, a nice sharp pair, and you want to start trimming. So you'll basically want to outline and trim where the line is. So what I do is I go a little bit shorter than what's indicated, so that way I can always trim a bit more off if need be. I don't go over, just in case I cut off too much. So we're gonna have to still trim some more off. This is exactly how we want it to look. So that way it's not kinking under, you're still covering a little bit at the top here, and there's no creasing. That is the end result that we're looking for. Now we'll do the same on the other side. Once again, you want to be sure to cut off less than what's marked, so that way you can always trim off more if need be. Next up, we'll focus on our drainage situation. We have two larger drains, which will go at the very front of the tub, and two smaller drains, which will be here closest to the tailgate. Keep in mind that you have hose clamps as well, but you will find that the hoses going onto the actual shutter and arms themselves are quite tight. So if anything, these are more decorative, but they are good to have on anyway.
So we're gonna go in and do the front drains closest to the back of the vehicle. Now you've got these factory rubber grommets that run through the floor as drainage points. So we like to reuse those and check them out in the center so we can run the hose straight through.
So what I'm doing here is just coring at the inside. So I've got the blade, I'm just slowly working my way around. Watch your fingers, of course. and I'm just literally cutting off the bottom of the plug here. Now, there's this section just here where the bung clips into the actual tub itself, so I want to avoid that and just take off the bottom end of it. Like so. So you should still have that small ring on the inside of it. Now once I've got that, I can then put this straight back into its designated spot. Like so. Now, I can then put in my drain. Not forgetting the hose clamp, of course. Want to just dummy up the drain into the hole and match it up to where the outlet hose is for the canister. Now keep in mind that this hose won't go any further down than what I'm showing here, so about that much only goes down that hole. However, that's not necessary to worry about because we'll be trimming it off here anyway. So you get a rough mark of where the canister hose outlet is. You can then trim off the excess hose that you don't need, like so. And now you want this end, the flute end of the hose, going up into the canister with your hose clamp resting on top like so. Now it's also really good because these hose clamps have these wings, the wing nuts on the end of it, so you can always do them and undo them by hand, which is much safer than the screwdriver. So I feed in the bottom, I have the flute end going up into the canister, and I have my hose clamp on top. Now this is a snug fit, so don't worry, it will go on. Give it a bit of a twist, it'll work its way on. And then I tighten the hose clamp with the wing nut facing upwards so you don't see it from the outside of the car. So it's nice and hidden. Once that's finger tight, that won't go anywhere. And that hose just hangs down through the drain plug.
So it's also worth mentioning at this point as well, if you don't want the drain holes running to the floor because you're worried about putting pressure on them with some gear you might put in the back, you can also core a hole through the back here and run the drain hose straight out as well. Obviously that's just drilling more holes into the car. Some people want the neater look out the back and others don't want it drilled into the vehicle, so totally your call when it comes to that. If you're putting a tub liner in as well, we do trim the tub liner into a U shape around the drain holes, so that way you can slide the tub liner in and out as well. But that's something that you can decide whether you want to drill holes through the back there and run it straight out the back of the tub, or you're happy to put them through the factory drainage holes there, which is what we always recommend. So once you've done there, that's the driver's side. Thomas is just going to repeat on the passenger side and do the exact same thing. So trim the drain hoses to length, check out the rubber grommet so that the hose can go straight through, and then fix it on as well.
So for our rear drains, it is very similar. We have this little grommet here, which we can pull out, core the inside of it, place the grommet back in, and then feed our hose through. Now there is an option where you can either go through this grommet, or you can have a hole cored straight down through here. This customer in particular did not want to core any new holes in his tub, so we're going to be going straight from this outlet here, behind the bracket, over the 13mm bolt, and then straight into this grommet here. And we'll show you how that's done now. Pull the grommet out, get your Stanley, careful of your fingers, take your time, there's no rush, and just slowly working it around, like so. Pop out the middle of it, try and make it a nice, perfect circle in there, try and get off some of the excess that you couldn't reach. And once it's all smooth on the inside, there's no extra rubber poking out, we can put this grommet back in the tub and then feed through our hose. So we fit our grommet back inside its hole, just here. We take our hose and our hose clamp and we feed it on over the top of the outlet hose for the arm, twist it on. I then tighten the hose clamp. And then I have the wing nut positioned inside like this, just so it's hidden from the eye. Once that's tight and you're happy with that, I then take the hose. No need to cut the hose, by the way, that's completely fine. Feed it behind third bracket. So it's just all hidden away above the 13mm bolt. And then you just feed it straight down through this grommet here. Now behind here, the hose will just go straight down to the ground. It won't touch anything. It will avoid everything. It won't mess around with your inverter or anything like that, and go straight to ground. And once you feed enough of this through, you can make this hose nice and straight. Keep in mind, you want to avoid a kink in this corner here, so leave a little bit of slack so it's a nice curve, like so. And that is your rear drain. We're now doing the same process on the passenger side, where we feed the grommet in, we feed our drain through the arm outlet here, tighten our hose clamp, feed the hose through the grommet, and then that is all your drains done. Happy days.
So this is the Sellies sealant that we use. It's a waterproof black sealant. So this is the one that you want if you're going to go to Bunnings and do your own DIY installation. So this is what we also used on the front of the tub earlier in the video to seal up the gaps. So now Thomas is going to prepare this and we're going to show you how to stick down the front section.
For our final stage of the installation, to seal down that front rubber seal, we're going to need a couple of things. A very thin poker so we can push the rubber at the front down. We're going to use a thin razor blade as well, our silicone to seal it down, and a bit of packaging foam. And we'll use this foam to hold the front rubber down with the sealant, so that way it adheres and stays in its position that we want. So I'm just pushing the rubber seal all the way down, so that way water doesn't build up behind the shutter and just go straight down to the ground. And this little poker really helps with that. So all the rubber is facing downward. And then that red tape, you just want to peel off that little red seal here and get that out of your way as well. And that's all still facing downward. So for this next bit, we're going to be trimming off this little T-piece here, and we're going to be cutting off the excess on the edge here. So what I like to use as well is a little pair of side cutters, which help me out really well. Snip. And under there, snip as well. Just to peel off that little T-piece there. And then from there, you take your razor blade, and then with that, you can slice this excess coming from the edge. Again, there's no rush. Nice. This is what the end result should look like. It just overhangs and then meets with the bottom of the black plastic there. That's our desired length that we want. Then we'll be applying our silicone just beneath where the 3M tape is. Just applying a very light bead underneath it. So that way when we apply the foam that sits on top of it, it'll adhere it nicely to the tub itself. Nice thick bead, like so. And then you press it down like that. And then with our foam inserts that we prepared before, you push these in, and that'll hold down that rubber seal nicely. So once this is installed and the silicone's been done, we leave this foam insert on between 24 and 48 hours for that silicone underneath to properly adhere. And then after that period, you can remove the foam and that'll be set. final stage of the shutter installation, we're going to be lubricating the tracks where the shutter door moves back and forth. Once we apply this curtain track lube or suitable equivalent, you want to work the shutter open and closed so that substance works in. One more thing to cast your eyes over again after finishing is that our side rubber here has popped up a little bit. We just want to fix that. And you want to run your finger all the way along this rubber here, just to make sure it's all the way on. And so no water works its way in to your shutter. So just run your finger along the whole length, making sure it's pressed in nicely. We'll do the same on the other side. Make sure that's all well and good. Yeah, just a little bit at the front here, and that's still on. And after this, we can give it a nice wipe down, and then it'll be ready for the customer. Another step we take to make the shutter ready is to lubricate the key barrel and the shutter door mechanism as well. So we just pump a little bit of WD-40 into the locking pin, work the key in and out a couple of times, turn it so it really works in the WD-40. And our second point of lubrication, as you feel under here, we have a little rubber grommet. You can peel this away, and then you can lubricate the internal mechanism of the shutter handle. And then you can pop that grommet straight back on. And that is the handle and the locking barrel lubricated. Now I will show you our 3 locking stages for our roller shutter. First, we have fully closed in its current position now. We have fully open, and you hear that click, that's the lock re-engaging. And then we have our halfway position, like so. Say you have a protruding load coming out of the back of the tub, this is handy for that as well. And then to fully close it, just simply pull on it, and that locks. Another method of opening your roller shutter without using the key barrel button is the strap itself. You pull the strap to the right-hand side, that opens it and disengages the lock. To re-engage the lock, you simply pull it to the left, the opposite direction, and that re-engages the lock as well.
And it's worth mentioning at this point as well, for the manual roller shutter particularly, as Thomas has already made this adjustment, if you can grab this panel and move it left and right, you haven't adjusted the end rails far in enough. So we've seen other shutters or DIY installs where this is not tight enough. So these end rails have not come in enough. And what happens is when you go over bumps, the shutter is going to open to roughly about here because it jumps out of the locking pin. So that's a very important thing, not only on our roller shutters, but it's just in general. If you're DIY installing, make sure these end rails are all the way in. If you loosen up these brackets in here, just at the top on this small 10 mil, just the 2 at the rear, or sometimes in some cases for a lot of adjustment, you need to do that second one there as well. That will solve that problem. So you just get someone to put some pressure inwards and also make sure that it's still not too tight. So you've got to have a happy medium between both. Otherwise, if you don't, the manual shutter will pop open over bumps because the pins jump out of the locks. That's probably the only consideration. And that's not only for the KINETIQ roller shutters, that's for a lot of shutters on the market. We've even seen it with some of the original shutters too. And we've made those adjustments and fixed them up for people as well.
Final thing, we just want to wipe this down, make it look presentable, make it look nice for the customer, and then they'll be on their way. that's the end of our manual roller shutter installation. Thank you very much for watching. If you're interested in how to assemble our electric variant of these roller shutters, the link for that video will be in the description of this one. And that's it. See you guys next time.